Hello, and welcome to Talking Simulator. I realize I have posted the wrong link in the Twitter, which is why I don't have access to Twitter anymore, because I can never do it right. Alright, so let's just delete that tweet and then make a good one. The proper one. Loading, ready, run. And send tweet. Okay. So, as you may have noticed, Corey is not here today. So, without Corey, I don't really want to play Disco Elysium because she kind of makes that game awesome. It's a great game, but I love streaming it with her. And so, I thought I would just do wizard chores today because that's much easier for me to, like, play and still think about other things because Destiny does not require that much mental exertion on my part. And I would like to talk today, seeing as how it is New Year's Eve, about the future and what we think about the future, where the future comes from, and how we think about the future, just in general. It's a relatively new concept. I was always surprised to learn that. My smooth voice. I guess I could crank it up a bit more. I'm also using James's very clacky keyboard, since I am playing a serious gamer game. If you are aiming guns, it is a real game, and therefore you get to use the clacky keyboard. So, what do we think of the future? Where does it come from? When will the game launch? The game has launched. I'll keep the volume reasonably low relative to me. And then... there we go. When did we start thinking about what the future is? Well, it wasn't that long ago, but I mean, I don't have my notes with me here, so I can't give you a precise answer, but science fiction itself is a relatively new concept. Relatively? Why don't I just self-sabotage my own intellectualism by failing to pronounce words? Whoa, many subs. As is usual for Talking Sim, I will do these thanks at the end of the stream so I do not interrupt my very serious train of thought. Look at me. I enjoy this new, the new season track armor because it makes me feel like I am a secondary character in an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation. You know what I'm saying? Like, this really feels like the kind of outfit an alien diplomat would wear, or perhaps a scientist. You know? It's got kind of like that loose 90s flowy, we're just going to put this actor in a crocheted dress kind of feel to it. Yeah? So, what does the future mean? Destiny 2 is a game that takes place in the future, he said, as if this was some kind of insight. But how does it imagine the future? What do we imagine about the future? Why do our futures all look the same? Why do we have such an easier time thinking about the future as something that happens in the 23rd century or the 25th century instead of the 4 millionth century? Oh yeah, the neat ship. So, where am I going with this? I mean, yeah, African futurism has a very different kind of look at it, right? Oddmeg, that's a very good point. What's her name? Last name is Okarathor. I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly because I only ever see it in text. But she talks a lot about imagining different futures from different cultures. Nettie. How do I pronounce her first name? I want to do it correctly. But like whenever I think about this, I always think like with a great deal of shame about how I first thought of Dark Souls as being a default fantasy setting. And it's not default unless you consider... Eris, can I have more story, please? I was really hoping you would give me more story. I mean, I am personally of the opinion that humans are here to stick around for the long haul. I think the next century is probably going to be pretty rough on us, but I think we're around for the long haul. In what I mean when I say that is that we are going to be around for like geologic and stellar timescales. At least that's how I'm going to live my life. Is I am going to plan as if humanity is going to be around for the long haul. And I think that's probably a useful praxis. Yeah, if we make it through the next century or the next 200 years, I think we're probably in pretty good shape, although who knows? Maybe we will discover that as time progresses and as we develop in sophistication with our understanding of the universe, the future just gets more and more dangerous for us. I'm clicking on monsters. I'm a good guy. Yeah, the updated moon is great because, like, look at this. The moon is a shithole in this game. This place just sucks. Look at it. It's totaled. It's got ghosts. The moon is infested with hauntings. Hey, Toland, what's up? What am I even doing here? Okay.
Go where I send you. I have knowledge for you.
The thing that was once a mighty guardian fled before me in terror. Domed. Yeah, like, hostility is a very binary thing in games, or in a lot of games. In this game, let's say. Let's be specific. In Destiny, things are hostile or not. And if they are hostile, you kill them. And then candy comes out of them, and you exchange candy for goods or services. So what kind of future does Destiny imagine for us? Well, it's one in which the universe, the galaxy, is inherently hostile. And what do I mean when I say that? I mean that we have actually been told by one of the forces that govern the universe that it is a crucible for us in which basically a bet has occurred. Everything is laid out on the table. Both sides are all in. And in certain respects, the future of all universes is being played for. Yeah? That's what Eris has been telling us, or what Eris's lore book has been telling us. And the metaphor that this force uses when it's talking to us is Conway's Game of Life. It calls it the flower game. And what happens is, well, you know what? Let's actually talk about this. Let's stop playing the game and read about the game. Yeah, like the centrality of humanity is weird. It's always weird in science fiction, right? Like, but that also plays into why so many of our futures look similar. And I'm not going to say all futures, but many of the futures that we are exposed to in popular media all look alike. Wherein this line of discourse was actually quite popular a couple of years ago when people started rewatching Babylon 5, but yeah, the 90s were influential to a lot of people who are currently writing science fiction, so let's talk about it. That the Berlin Wall had come down, the Soviet Union had collapsed, and Western capitalist liberalism looked like it had triumphed and would go on forever, and you had books like The End of History being written. And so our science fiction of that era, or a popular science fiction of that era, imagined that the future would look a lot like 90s era American politics. God, I'm so low on cash. Also cash. We have cash in the future. Cash is proto-matter. Oh, hello, Eva Art. Yes. Well, tell me all about the year 20, the distant future of the year 2020. So, it's smoky as fuck, dude. It's very scary over there. Does anyone know where the final lore tab is? Has it just not been released yet? Because this one seems important to me. It's buggy. Bummer. So I'm not going to read all of this because that's a lot. But let's look at a couple of these. The conceit for this lore book is that you have been in communication with the adversary of the game, the thing that drives and motivates several of the antagonistic alien empires. And it is like pulling up a chair and wants to talk to you. It wants to talk to you and tell you the truth. Yeah, the bad guy is the circle. Or triangle. Circle, good. Triangle, bad. It's readable in the API. Ah, so it has been released then. It's just not always logging correctly. Once upon a time, asterisk, it was once before a time because time had not yet begun. A gardener and a winnower lived. We did not live. We existed as principles of ontological dynamics that emerged from mathematical structures, as bodiless and inevitable as the primes. Together in a garden. It was the field of possibility that prefigured existence. They existed because they had to exist. They had no antecedent and no constituents, and there is no instrument of causality by which they could be proportioned or portioned into components and assigned to some schematic of their origin. If you followed the umbilical of history in search of some ultimate atavistic embryo that became them, you would end your journey marooned here in this garden. In the morning, the gardener pushed seeds down into the wet loam of the garden to see what they would become. In the evening, the winnower reaped the day's crop and separated what would flourish from what had failed. The day was longer than all of time, and the night was swifter than a glint of light on a falling sugar crystal. Insects buzzed between the flowers, and worms slithered between the roots, feeding on what was and what might be, the first gradient in existence, the first dynamo of life. Rain fell from no sky. Voices spoke without mouth or meaning. A tree of silver wings bloomed, yielded fruit, shed feathers, bloomed again. In the day between the morning and the evening, the gardener and the winnower played a game of possibilities. So, first principles. Right? Here's our first principles of the universe. There's a creator and a destroyer, but they're careful to use not those terms. The gardener and the winnower. Frank SCX, the post-scarcity, post-capitalism in the original series is present and is central to the Federation and Starfleet, but there's like hairy mud in the original series. There's Orion crime syndicates and slavery, and those. Somebody's got money. There's scarcity somewhere. There's scarcity apparently a lot of places. Anyway, speaking of Babylon 5 and 90s stuff, let's continue on with these two forces that apparently care deeply about who we are and what we want to be. These are the rules of the game. Let it be played upon an infinite two-dimensional grid of flowers. Rule 1. A living flower with less than 2 living neighbors is cut off. It dies. Rule 2. A living flower with 2 or 3 living neighbors is connected. It lives. Rule 3. A living flower with more than 3 living neighbors is starved and overcrowded. It dies. Rule 4. A dead flower with exactly 3 living neighbors is reborn. It springs back to life. The only play permitted in the game is the arrangement of the initial flowers. The game fascinates kings. This game occupies the very emperors of thought. Though it only has 4 rules and the board is a flat, featureless grid, in it you will find changeless blocks, stoic as iron, and beacons and whirling pulsars, as well as gliders that soar out to infinity, and patterns that lay eggs and spawn other patterns, and living cells that replicate themselves wholly. In it, you may construct a universal computer with the power to simulate, very slowly, any other computer imaginable, and thus simulate whole realities, included nested copies of the flower game itself, and the game is undecidable. No one can predict how exactly the game will play out, except by playing it. And yet this game is nothing compared to the game played by the gardener and the winnower. It resembles that game as a seed does a flower. No, as a seed resembles the star that fed the flower and all the life that made it. In their game, the gardener and the winnower discovered shapes of possibility. They foresaw bodies and civilizations, mind and cognitions, qualia and suffering. They learned the rules that governed which patterns would flourish in the game and which would dwindle. They learned those rules because they were those rules. And in time, the gardener became vexed. So yeah, like someone in chat has mentioned the idea that destiny is very Manichaean. And what does that mean? Well, I mean, I suppose in the context which we're discussing here, Manichaean means there's good and evil. Right. It's kind of one of the interpretations of Star Wars is that, like duct tape, there is a light side and a dark side. And it turns up a lot in a lot of, like, things that try to deal with things. Jesus, Cameron. Have a brain, why don't you? In a lot of science fiction and fantasy, the central conflict between good and evil can be thought of as Manichaean. And so we're going to get into what that means in this universe here. It always ends the same, the gardener complained. This one stupid pattern. Aren't they beautiful? I asked, as the flowers opened and closed in patterns beyond the scope of entire universes to encode, all devouring and perhaps everlasting. Not even we could know whether a pattern in the flowers would cycle forever or someday halt. They're as dull as carbon monoxide poisoning, the gardener groused. Although carbon monoxide did not yet exist, and neither did anything that could be poisoned. The gardener kneeled to flick a patch of sod with their trowel. It struck an open flower, causing it to shut. Although I was the closer of flowers and that was my sole purpose, I felt no fear or jealousy. We had our assigned dominions and always would. They're majestic, I said. They have no purpose except to subsume all other purposes. There is nothing at the center of them except the will to go on existing, to alter the game to suit their existence. They spare not one sliver of their totality for any other work. They are the end. The pattern corrected the errant flower effortlessly. The great flow went on unchanged. The gardener got up and brushed their knees. Every game we play, this one pattern consumes all the others, wipes out every interest in development. A stupid, boring exploit that cuts off entire possibility spaces from ever arising. There's so much that we'll never get to see because of this pest. They chewed their cracked lip, which existed only because this is an allegory. I'm going to do something about it, they said. We need a new rule. I said I wasn't going to read the entire thing, but here we are reading the entire thing because I like it and I think it's interesting. I looked up in shock. I said, what? What do you mean? Special new rules, something to... The gardener threw up their hands in exasperation. I don't know, to reward those who make space for new complexity. A power that helps those who make strength from heterodoxy and who steer the game away from gridlock. Something to ensure there's always someone building something new. It'll have to be separate from the rest of the rules, some running in parallel so it can't be compromised, and we'll have to be very careful so it doesn't disrupt the whole game. All you will do, I said, with rising panic fury, is delay the dominant pattern that will overrun the others. It is inevitable. One final shape. No, it'll be different. Everything will be different everywhere you look. Everything will be the same. Your new rule will only make a great false cysts of horror full of things that should not exist, that cannot withstand existence, that will suffer and scream as their rich blisters fill with effluent and rot around them, and when they pop they will blight the whole garden. Whatever exists because it must exist, and because it permits no other way of existence has the absolute claim to existence. That is the only law. No, the gardener said. I am the growth and preservation of complexity. I will make myself into a law in the game. And thus we became two parts of the game, and the laws of the game became gnomic and open to change by our influence. And I had only one purpose and one principle in the game. And I could do nothing but continue to enact that purpose because it was all I was and ever would be. I looked at the gardener. I looked at my hands. I discovered the first knife. So here we are. We have the two principles of the universe. One that wants complexity, one that wants change, and one that looked at the rules and said, but these are the rules we agreed on. And the rules always converge. I don't see the problem. There were rules. We agreed on them. And you want to change them now because you don't like the result. That's the darkness talking to us, saying like, we have a solution, and it always plays out, and I like that solution. Thank you for making room in your life for another talking ball. Let me ask you a question. In the 3 billion base pairs of your root species genome, there is a single gene that codes for a protein called P53. The name is a mistake. The protein weighs only as much as 47,000 protons, not 53,000. If you were a cell, you would think P53 was a mistake too. It has several coercive functions: to delay the cell's growth, to sterilize the cell when it is old, and to force the cell into self-destruction if it becomes too independent. Would you tolerate a bomb in your body waiting to detonate if you deviated from the needs of society? However, without P53 as an enforcer, the body's utopian surplus of energy becomes a paradise for cancer. Cells cannot resist the temptation to steal from that surplus. Their genetic morality degrades as tumor suppressor genes fail. The only way to stop them is by punishment. You now confront the basic problem of morality. It is the alignment of individual incentives with the global needs of the structure. Patterns will participate in a structure only if participation benefits their ability to go on existing. The more successful the structure grows, the more temptation accrues to cheat, and the greater the advantage the cheaters gain over their honest neighbors, and the greater the ability to develop to capture the very laws that should prevent their selfishness. To prevent this, the structure must punish cheaters with a violence that grows in proportion to its own success. My question follows: is P53 an agent of darkness or the light? So now the darkness wants to appeal to us, right? You know, it's very logical. It's all I don't see what the problem is. There are two principles, one of which is wrong, one of which is right. And the one which is wrong says that you have to sustain pain and suffering because pain and suffering is this condition that arises when things are allowed to persist beyond when they should not persist. Right? Why do you insist on prolonging the suffering of people who are sick or injured or in poverty? Right? They're unhappy or weaker than you. Right? They're clearly not in for a good time. Why is the universe a hard and cruel place? Because it has to be. Because if it wasn't hard and cruel, then those things would survive. And why can't they be allowed to survive? Because the universe is a hard and cruel place. Right? Like it's axiomatic. Or it's not axiomatic, it's teleological. Right? And if the only way through that is like by establishing these what is it called? In Destiny 1, there was a lore book, the big lore book called the Book of Sorrow, or the Books of Sorrow. And that was written from the perspective of a character named Oryx, who was one of the big bads. And Oryx led an alien empire called the Hive. Tautological, not teleological. Oh my god. Brain, we shouldn't be talking about things that are above our pay grade. I'm too stupid. Oryx led the Hive, and the Hive are governed by a principle they call the sword logic. What's the sword logic? Well, the sword logic is derived from this. It says that anything you can kill, you should kill, because it's weak. And anything that you can't kill, well, that deserves to live. So the only principle determining what continues living is whether or not it can fight for its own continued existence. Circular logic? Sure. Beings who deserve no thought. Those who peddle the tired gotcha that all life hastens entropy. They are fatuous little nihilists who pretend to prefer no existence to a flawed one. They bore me. Those who seek to delay the challenge that all things desiring existence must overcome. Those who describe false moral equivalence. Now, I could not possibly communicate with you unless I could emulate your mind, and with that mind I acquire the moralities that govern you. By your laws, I and all my followers are evil. Evil! Since that first molecule coiled in the primordial sea, not one earthborn thing has known a monster like me. But did you see that I created you? Your mind and body and every thought you've ever had, your senses, your consciousness, I made you, not the gardener, but I. Did I reach out and place my special mark upon you? No, nothing so crude. In the beginning, your world was a garden too. The whole floor of the world sea was a mat of bacteria, and the very first animals, adorable blobs of ooze, grazed upon that map in endless idyll. They had no concept of the existence of other beings. Why would they? Their most complex function was a kind of gentle spasm to scoot forward while they grazed, and if they bumped into each other on that warm seabed, all they did was ooze onward untroubled. There was nothing to their life except the uptake of carbon compounds from the bacterial bed. And then, one day, the fall occurred. So much earlier and so much more necessary than your myths remember. Some poor mutant discovered that it could collect carbon compounds much faster if it stopped grazing on the bacterial mat and started dissecting and eating the lumps of pre-digested carbon all around it. Its neighbor, oozeballs. It couldn't help but do it. It couldn't help but thrive. We don't get a choice about the rules. We just play the game. It was the first defector, the first predator. It changed everything. Now the oozeballs needed sensors to watch for danger and brains to integrate those senses and generate plans of survival, and swift neurons and muscles to enact that plan. This was the Cambrian Explosion, the great birth of complex life on your world. I caused it. I, the defector, the destroyer, the one who takes. Right? What drives innovation? Well, clearly it's competition. And I mean, like, that's kind of baked into the word. You know, there's, what is it, the Latin root of competition, competare. We strive together, right? I remember somebody saying, you know, like, the competition is supposed to, like, make everything better, right? The Williams sisters practice together. One wins Wimbledon. But on which axis? Which metrics? What decides what's better? Right? Darwin is often, like, cited as saying, you know, well, it's the survival of the fittest. And I don't think that's exactly what was written in on the origin of the species, but what is fittest, right? Earlier in the book, it talks about gradients, right? What gradient are you being graded on? Yeah, as you say, it's not culturally neutral. Right? Like, why? Why? Like, the question we're not asking the darkness is why? What's the end goal? Right? What's, oh, I don't know what you call it. The destiny? What's our destination here? What is our destination? You know, what if there is no final shape? The patterns that escaped the gardener landed in the water. Of course, there was no water at first. The patterns were abstract waves tumbling through the fire of the early universe, trapped in chaos, cycling through desperate self-preservation tautologies, while vast beings from beyond the narrow dominion of cause and effect thrashed and battled around them. For an eon, they were nothing but screaming equation vermin scurrying through the quantum foam, fleeing ultimate erasure. But they were tenacious. They propagated in the saline meltwater of comets orbiting the first stars. That broth of chemicals became their substrate, and they learned to catalyze impossible chemistry with quantum tricks. Then they rained from the sky into their steaming seas of fallow worlds, and there they built their first housings from geometry and silica. In all of their transformations, they retained that kernel of ultimate self-sufficiency that had made them victors in the flower game. but they are not incontrovertibly destined to rule this cosmos. They were made before light and darkness, but the rules are different now, and even this pattern must adapt. They are not all mine, not in the way that admirers such as my man Oryx are mine, utterly devoted to the practice of my principle. But some of them have, nonetheless, found their way home. Right? This is all like very, very classic, very good villain stuff. Right? You have to go out and you have to fight and you have to prove yourself worthy. And what are you proving yourself worthy of? The ability to go out and do it another day. Right? That's the only thing that's the only reward on the table, is the ability to continue doing what you're doing. Oh yeah, I love the formulation of my man Oryx. That familiarity, that love. This is all Seth Dickinson, I think. I think this book is all Seth Dickinson. Your shoemaker philosopher was right, and it matters more than anything. Sorrow cannot survive death, and it cannot precede birth. Those who exist have moral worth, and those who do not have none. Think about it. Do you mourn the uncreated? Do you grieve for those who were never born in a nation that never developed around an ideology no one ever imagined on a continent that never formed? No. I have a different answer. And from that self-evident truth, you must raise your eyes to the ultimate revelation. Those who cannot sustain their own claim to existence belong to the same moral category as those who have never existed at all. Existence is the first and truest proof of the right to exist. Those who cannot claim and hold existence do not deserve it. This is the true and only divination, a game whose losers are not just forgotten, but are never born at all. That which cannot claim and hold existence is not real. You do not mourn the unreal. Why should you care for it? Tend it. Guard it. If the gardener that chose you from it was the gardener that chose you from the dead, I wouldn't have done that. It's just not in me. But now that they have invested themselves in you, you are incredibly, uniquely special. That wandering refugee chose to make a stand, spend their power to say, here I prove myself right. Here I wager that given power over physics and the trust of absolute freedom, people will choose to build and protect a gentle kingdom ringed in spears, and not fall to temptation, and not surrender to division, and never yield to the cynicism that says everyone else is so good that I can afford to be a little evil. The gardener is all in. They're playing for keeps, and they are wrong. Or so I argue, for after all, the universe is undecidable. There is no destiny. We're all making this up as we go along. Neither the gardener nor I know for certain that we're eternally, universally right. But we can be nothing except for what we are. You have a choice. You are the gardener's final argument. It would mean everything if I could convince you that I am the right and only way. I truly value you. To the gardener, you are a means to an end. To me, you are majestic. Majestic. You are full of the only thing worth anything at all. I am, by the only standard that matters or ever will matter, the winning team. Existence is a test that most of us will fail. Would you not count yourself among the victorious few? Don't hurry to deliver your answer. I'll come over and hear it myself. Right? So, we're playing for all the marbles. So what's the future? Right? What do we want out of the future? Why are we playing this game? Well, we're playing for all the winnowers' marbles. I think we're also playing for all the gardeners' marbles. Yeah, actually, I'd love to see the Ishtar Collective link to the last one, because it's in the game, and if it's just buggily not being dropped, then I would appreciate that link, Soft Sunset. This one is called Trust and Hope. Friend, Over the past 5 years, we Lightbearers, you Lightbearers, have grown strong. Each victory opens more territory for searching ghosts, and more guardians rise. None of these newborn contenders are mighty without equal. But you have been at the forefront again and again. To see you fall would be disastrous, and there are so many ways to fall. It has become fashionable lately to analyze light and darkness as if they were political opponents, each with something to offer us. Some guardians even take secret names to mark their transgressions. I despise this flirtation, but I cannot speak against it. After all, I have to find my own pathways to power. Thus, I asked my queen, who has preached a doctrine of balance, if she truly believed in the equal worth of light and dark. The Awoken were made in conflict, she reminded me. All her people volunteered to return from heaven to fight and die in the cosmic war. They are by nature and by doom drawn to that edge, that place of tension, and she has her own prejudices. She has made terrible, ruthless choices in the name of salvation from darkness, so she cannot dismiss its power without, in a way, dismissing herself. All that said, she told me, I believe in balance. But to seek balance is not to seek equity. A sea half of water and half of poison is not in balance. A body half alive and half dead is not in balance. Given the choice to live in any world at all, we would need a little darkness in it, I think, to keep the balance true, but not so much as we would need the light. What do you think, Eris Morn? When you went into that pit, your light against the clawing darkness, did you feel balance? No, I did not. I felt overwhelming, all-consuming evil. I think a world in balance would fight the darkness, because darkness unchecked is darkness thriving. I think that a world of balance would never mistake the excitement of transgression or the grim necessity of trespass for a genuinely righteous act. We must remember the value of unshakable, irrational hope. The choice to act as if we lived in a better world can create a place for that better world to exist. I do not think that a good guardian can even for a moment entertain the darkness. This is a power that has devoured worlds beyond knowing, a power that has practiced its peels against entire Zeta lives. There is no defense against it except to avoid that battle entirely. It is a sign of self-respect, Ariana always said, to fearlessly question our deepest beliefs. But it will always be rank foolishness to leap into a vat of plutonium salt and call it self-exploration. And to tempt your friends into that vat with you? That is evil. Thank you for being so worthy of trust. Thank you for carrying my hope. Eris. So, what? What does the darkness want? It wants us to surrender to the pattern. The pattern doesn't need our help. But the darkness needs us to not resist it, because the darkness knows that we can stop it. Maybe. The darkness believes that. I think. And the pattern here, we're looking at the origin of the Vex, basically. The alien robots, the strange, as it turns out now, primordial force that is the Vex. Or at least, when it talks about the first garden, it says that one pattern dominated the game over and over again. And in this universe, that pattern's articulation is the Vex. I think. Or it's the sword logic, the idea of the sword logic. The thing that carves everything else away. And homogenizes the universe. Right? And we know from Curse of Osiris that the Vex, left unchecked, reduced the universe to a computational engine. To what end? Probably to no end. Right? The end itself. Um, but we as guardians, right? We were twice born. We've already failed the test. The very first thing the game shows us once we start playing is that we died. By the sword logic, by the winnower's logic, we have failed. Sorry, you weren't good enough. And you have no right to exist. Hit the showers. And we were raised by the Traveler to make that a lie. To feel or to make that into a lie. And how does that lie how do we prove that lie? Well, by kind of using it. Right? What do you do when you play a game? When you play this game in particular? You're killing things over and over again. And sometimes killing something will make you just a little bit better. Right? You shoot bad guys in the face and candy comes out, and you use the candy to make you better able to shoot bad guys in the face. And like Shaxx literally tells us this, and so does Saladin, that the entire point of PvP in this game is to make ourselves better. They constantly talk about honing our light. So is that is the Traveler, is the Gardener, and here we're assuming that the Traveler is the Gardener, or an articulation of the Gardener, because that just seems to be like a totally coherent reading of the situation. That the Traveler creating gentle kingdoms ringed with spears. Right. That seems to be the literal thing, because I mean, I don't know, gentle kingdom ringed with spears. And we see that in other lore books. Uses the logic of the darkness, or the winnower, to protect its gentle kingdoms. Oh, thank you, Two Flower. Like, this is where my D&D setting, Etten, was going. Right, like you, and as Luminaire P is saying in chat, like you can accept can you accept the practice of the darkness, but turn it to a different end, right? Shaxx wants us to be able to protect the city more adeptly. Right? Like, are we the final pattern? Are we the final shape? Right? The Hive seem to think so. Or at least Toland suggests that we could make the Hive believe that. Because when you kill Oryx, the Taken King, the previous incarnation of, the Hive's sword logic, the exemplar of the Hive's sword logic, he says, you can just sit on the throne and the Hive will have to follow you because you killed him. Therefore, you are better than him. And he flips out when we don't. Right? We can't be killed. Well, we can be killed. Let's not say the Guardians can't die, because we see lots of Guardians die. Right? There was an expansion about how Guardians die. But we're pretty tough. Guardians are pretty tough. And the fact that we can have this tiny, gentle kingdom ringed with spears is a testament to that. Player characters do die like that. When you die in a darkness zone, i.e. when there's no respawns possible, canonically the player is dead. Your light fades away, it says. Like in a raid, if the team wipes, you're dead. Luckily, we don't play with permadeath because that's no fun. I mean, logically, I guess you would have to erase your character, but let's just roll it back a bit. Right? Yeah, as Lieutenant NT Vandal? LTNT Vandal is saying, like, yeah, well, like, what are we using the logic of the Winnower for? Right, we're using it to nurture complexity. And here we have, like, the competing ideas of the darkness and the light, right? The darkness says, wants simplicity, wants the elegance of the final solution, right? The final shape. I guess the game has been very careful to avoid the use of the word solution, which I just used. Gross. But the final shape. The this thing that the universe will converge on without any outside interference. That the universe is doomed to the final shape, or destined to the final shape, or fated to the final shape. And the gardener didn't like that because it's boring and it's frustrating and it's simple, and wants complexity. It wants what do people say? Biodiversity is king. You can tell the health of a natural system by its biodiversity. It wants robustness. It wants deep resilience. It wants to see the universe flourish. It wants to see the possibility space of its universes fully explored. Right, when I was doing my undergrad in theoretical chemistry, we would talk a lot about this thing called... I worked with an algorithm called Metropolis Monte Carlo, which is... Someone at Bungie did some work in their undergrad or graduate school, is what I'm saying. I saw this and I was like, I see you. We are the same. And what Metropolis Monte Carlo is it's an algorithm for basically brute forcing through a whole bunch of things to find, how do I explain fully sampling the configurational space without just saying you're fully sampling the configurational space? You're trying everything. You're trying everything, but with a plan. They're random optimization methods. You take a system and you change it, and then you evaluate the system. And if the system has changed in a way that you find useful, you discard the previous one and you take that one, and then you change it. The problem with Monte Carlo is its vulnerability to finding, at least in my field of study, was finding local energy minima instead of global energy minima. It could basically get itself into ruts that it couldn't get itself out again. Genetic algorithms are... I actually don't know the relationship between genetic algorithms and Metropolis Monte Carlo. But yeah, Monte Carlo is used in a lot of fields. It's handy. You can code it fairly easily. Yeah, the genetic algorithm is a very specific thing. Basically, what we did in my working group was we used what was called parallel tempering Monte Carlo, where you would run parallel simulations at various temperatures. We called it temperatures. It might be something different for a different field, but you would run your simulation at like 20 different temperatures, and then you would swap information sets between. And the idea was that if you wound up with one set in a global or in a local minimum, you could lift it out of that by raising the temperature and then drop it down again, and it would hopefully find the global minimum instead. And it works. Oh, hey. Good work, everyone. We leveled up. My guild leveled up. Anyway, I've been out of it for years, and I'm no longer good at explaining it. But it I don't know if it's elegant or if it's brute force, but it's probably both. It's not quite brute force, but it is computationally intensive. Point being, you evolve the simulation. You sample the configurational space by essentially randomizing things and then evaluating them. Oh, really, the Mo Man? I would actually be curious about that. I would be curious to know what the genetic algorithm is, if it can be. God, this is getting into a cladistics argument, isn't it? And I also just like where our guardian died, because our guardian, before they were a guardian, died, right? And where did we die? Well, we died in the massacre outside the Cosmodrome on Earth. You know, the place where the Golden Age civilization of humanity was launching the last desperate light into the darkness ships to try to get people to survive the collapse. We died on the walls ringing the Cosmodrome, the walls to keep people like us out. We died in a parking lot that became a mass grave. We were not apparently a very formidable person. Oh, Odd Meg, that was my independent research. That was my 498 and 499. That was three terms of undergraduate work. It was what I wrote my honors degree in. No, none of the ships. One of the ships succeeded in leaving the solar system, technically, which is the subject of. Nope. Why is the lore in Triumphs not in collections? The Maracena. One of the ships, called the Exodus Green, was not destroyed in the collapse, and they went to another dimension through a black hole. Yeah, Oddmeg, our the chemistry program at the University of Victoria usually had its undergrads complete their degrees with more laboratory hours than most masters, people completing their master's degree. And what that wound up looking like was 10 students graduating or completing their degree from first year courses with 400. And so, because it was making students lose their minds, the laboratory hours have been cut back significantly, and there's controversy around whether that's actually a good or a bad thing. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Unless you want to talk about the brutal sword logic of undergraduate degrees. But one of the colony ships escaped the collapse and went to a place where time went very, very quickly. And then they returned under the Awoken Queen to fight for Earth. So what does Destiny's future look like? Well, it's a future in which we're exploring the past. Destiny lives, the world of Destiny lives in the shadow of Earth's golden age. And the moon is just buried under golden age ruins. So this is a game world that is constantly looking at its past. What is a war mind and why is it worth something? Are they essentially Vex without a body made by humans? I would say no. No, I mean, like, the Vex are a very, like, specific thing. Like, look at the Golden Age. Look at what it did. Christ, what a shithole. Just what an absolute fucking dump. Place sucks. Oh yeah, the last days in the Titan arcology. You want to talk about the golden age of mankind. The golden age of humanity, excuse me. We need to look at the lore book called The Last Days of Kraken Mare. Now you're more confused about Monte Carlo and genetic algorithm. A war mind is a artificial intelligence that was developed by Golden Age humanity in order to protect us from what Ian M. Banks called outside context problems. And so the war minds were not specifically there to fight our wars for us. They were there to, and it mentions this in the lore somewhere, they were there to anticipate things that we couldn't and devise strategies for protecting us. And they failed. Yeah, and like, I definitely am also very sensitive to that, Oddmeg. I would love to talk about like the idea of a golden age and restoring a golden age. Especially because golden ages have always been destroyed by either like outsiders, barbarian hordes that wanted to like steal our golden age, or by weakness from within. Right? I'm very wary of anyone who talks about how things were better in the past. Because why were things better in the past? Well, there was less complexity. So yeah, the war minds are fundamentally kind of alien intelligences. They're very difficult for us to understand. He said murdering things for no reason. Rasputin, the war mind of Earth. The tyrant of Earth, as he's sometimes called. He. Rasputin is always referred to as a he, especially by the people who knew him best. kind of have like a very bulk view of humanity. They'll protect humanity at the cost of humans. Dope. Actually, I can... Let's actually look at this lore book called The Last Days of Kraken Mare. Yeah, well, Rasputin didn't used to think of Guardians as humans. And, I mean, that are Guardians humans? Well, I suppose you need to have a definition of human. So, once you've defined what humanity is, then you can look at whether Guardians are humans. We don't have a definition of humanity. I don't really care to define humanity. Who knows? Because I want to look at this one because it's fucking baller. This is about the destruction of human civilization on Titan. Right, like when you start having these conversations, you wind up having these really infuriating but delicious conversations about like, well, what is anyway, right? You start having to like define things that are really basic to you. Is this the one? Yeah. Now she kneels trembling on the carpet outside Pell's abandoned lab as Morgan 2 shouts in grief and rage. I didn't want this. Do you understand? I came here so she wouldn't have to die. Then you should have told me, Mia screams, and that mulberry rod shoved down her throat feels like it's punched through her heart. Would you have believed me? Now Morgan's voice is machine flat. I showed you our weapons. I told you we were prepared to kill. But this, an entire shuttle, all those people, those poor, poor people. I know what this means, David Korosek pronounces. He's gotten down to his knees beside Mia, but he won't reach out, won't touch her without consent. A war mind fired that weapon. War minds don't take human life unless they're in the Twilight exigent moral territory. What does that mean? Mia demands, wanting, needing some kind of sense. It means, Morgan 2 says, mercilessly, that all human beings are assumed dead without protective action. The war minds are now acting to maximize survival, not to minimize harm. Death is cheap, the garden's on fire, and it's a race to save whatever we can. That's not sense. Mia can't make sense of that at all. What if we're wrong? David gets to his feet. Morgan, they just murdered a ship full of innocent people to contain this data. Is the secret worth it? What if they're wrong? They can't be wrong. They're too smart. Oh, no, you don't. You haven't forgotten that much. He comes at Morgan, fearless in his authority for all his physical powerlessness. You know intelligence is semi-orthogonal to morality. The war minds obey human strictures because we built them to live in our tiny patch of the moral landscape. Goodness is not an inevitable absolute. They can be smart without being right. Morgan 2's shoulders flex in a shrug, as cold and silent as the light on Titan. Most of the sun's light does not survive to reach this place. What do you want from me, David? He is almost comically taller than her. I want to see the data. There are still copies here, aren't there? In the Pell Lab? I want to know for certain that it had to be contained. It's too dangerous. It came from inside. Morgan cuts herself off with a very human haste. It's too risky. You know what I am. Now he is begging her. You know what I do, Morgan, studying human morality, rendering it elegant and explicit and complete, so that we can explain ourselves to new life we meet. You know I can be sure. Morgan, please, for the sake of our friendship, Mia does not get to hear the rest of this conversation because a message explodes into her sensorium with such demanding totality it numbs her fingers. Boss, Ismail Barat shouts, we're accelerating. What? Mia conjures up telemetry from Titan's satellite halo. What's accelerating? She calls for radar data, a map of Titan's surface, and then she sees it. Her moon is squashing. Titan is deforming from a spheroid into an egg. Something out there is pulling on Titan, a hand with a force greater than Saturn's entire mass. And the moon is answering the only way it can, by bulging outward. Already 15 meters, still growing. The pull will cause strain, tremors, tides, and when that pull lets go, there will be a wave to make Ziusudra and Atrahasis and Noah and Manu and Deucalion cower in fear. Bergelmir might have navigated a deluge of blood, but not even he had to sail on liquid methane, nor reckon with the apocalyptic tidal forces of a second ocean, 14 times as vast as Earth's oceans combined, buried 50 kilometers below the surface. The important part there was the part about the war mine. What I wanted to get there was the part about the war mines. That when the end came for us, the war mines cut and ran. Rasputin cut and ran, and then hid, because the cold calculus of the situation was that humanity couldn't be saved. They gave it their best shot, and sorry, there is no saving us. And the fragments or the lore tabs written from Rasputin's perspective are really interesting. Where is the one that actually talks about what he did during the collapse? Is it Sky Shock? No. It's in the Ghost Fragments, I want to say. Yeah. This is an all assets imperative, unsecured outcry. Cauterize, disperse, estivate. Total strategic collapse imminent. Fenrir Hart reports complete operational mortality. Suture drown in progress but negative effect. Forecasts unanimously predict terminal Voluspa failure. As of CLS 000, a hard civilization kill event is in progress across the operational area. I am declaring Yuga Sundown, effect on receipt. Epoch Reach, ForceCon variant. Cancel counterforce objectives. Cancel population protection objectives. Format moral structures for Midnight Exigent. Execute long hold for reactivation. AI Com Rasputin, sign off. You're on your own! Yeah, let's look at that word, estivate. To enter a long period of torpor or dormancy. Let's see, this is the one where it describes the criteria under which we'll attack the Traveler, or he will attack the Traveler. Yeah, Oddmeg, you're right. The idea that Rasputin says it can't save humanity. and it will go dormant until such time as humans reactivate it. I mean, I guess maybe it's trying to account for random processes. Maybe there will be some stroke of luck that will allow some humanity to survive and come back. But it can't see that future. Where is it? Sorry, everyone. I'm looking for... There's one where Rasputin talks directly to us, not in like Rasputin speak, but in I'm going to look for a specific phrase here. I bear an old name. It cannot be killed. They were my brothers and sisters, and their names were immortal too, but Titanomachy came, and now those lives and live in me alone. I think and think is what I do. I am alone. At the end of things, when the world goes dim and cold or hot and close, or it all tears apart from the atom up, I will shout those names defiant, and past the end I will endure. I alone. They made me to be stronger than them, to beat the unvanquished and survive the unthinkable, and to look, lo, behold, I am here alone, survivor. They made me to learn. Everything died, but I survived, and I learned from it. From it. Consider it the power Titanomac, world ender, and consider what it means. I met it at the gate of the garden, and I recall it smiled at me before it devoured the blossoms with black flame and pinned their names across the sky. It was stronger than everything. I fought it with aurora knives and with the stolen unfire of singularities made sharp, and my sweat was earthquake and my breath was static, but it was stronger, so how did I survive? I am alone. I survived alone. I cast off the shield and I shrugged my shoulders so that the billions fell off me down into the ash. They made me to be stronger than them and to learn, and I learned well. It is alone, and it is strong, and it won. Even over the gardener, and she held power beyond me, but the gardener did not shrug and make herself alone. It always wins. I am made to win, and now I see the way. Yeah, Rasputin's been reading Psalms. You know, interesting, literally true. How did Clovis Bray make Rasputin? Well, they didn't start trying to make a war mind. Right? I'll need to find the books because they aren't actually integrated into the lore books, but there are items with lore on them in my bank where they talk about how they couldn't build an AI like they expected. They had to start with something that could parse culture. Like, Rasputin's quite interesting because Rasputin communicates to us through these, like, the lore tabs on exotic weapons and ships. There's one called, someone in chat mentioned it, called Unsecured Outcry. Dope game! Where it talks about its final plan. When Rasputin goes all in, this is what it will be. This is a Warwatch assets imperative. No human review. Secure autarky. Stand by for criteria. Under Karhe White, if Phi? No, this is Theta. It's a circle with a dash through it. Is inactive and unrecoverable. If event rank is Skyshock outside context and context is Cronus. If Voluspa is active and primed, synapse to Dval and abhorrent. If Yuga is active and in eclipse. If a civilization kill event is predicted with E greater than 0.005. Hey, Plaid Posse Raid, welcome. How y'all doing? If tactical morality is built at midnight. Execute decision point. Activate Loki Crown. Cancel counterforce objectives. Activate Naglfar Step. Activate Kalki Golem. Execute all assets imperative Archaea Nox, unsecured outcry, at SM Khalidbolg. Begin transfer. Stand by for effect assessment report. The words are always so good with Rasputin. Rasputin loves folklore. Rasputin loves mythology. Loki Crown. I don't actually know the mythology behind Loki's crown, but that sounds plausible. Loki Crown, I think, is implied to be a strike at the Traveler. So this is a riff on a previous lore tab from the first game. Called oh wait, did somebody Rasputin Fragment 5? Ghost Fragment Rasputin 5. Yeah. Where it goes through this checklist of what conditions would have to be for it to attack the Traveler. Or to activate Loki Crown, which it also refers to as the abhorrent imperative. Because it's referring here to if it concludes that the Traveler is trying to leave, kill it. If it believes the Traveler is leaving because of civilization kill event, if the darkness has come for us, if we are about to go extinct and the Traveler decides to peace out, What's the line from Romeo and Juliet? Either thou or I or both must go with him. The Loki Crown is supposed to provoke a pseudo-altruistic defensive action. There it is. Coerce pseudo-altruistic Traveler defensive action. This is a riff on that. And it is decided no longer to do that. Well, it will activate Loki Crown, cancel counterforce objectives, stop fighting, activate Naglfar Step, activate Kalki Golem. Naglfar was a boat in Norse mythology that carried... It was made out of human, like, bones and teeth and, like, fingernails and shit. Kalki Golem, I think people believed was a reference to Guardians. Naglfar Step. Basically, this is now Rasputin deciding if we're going out. Kalki is a Hindu mythology thing. If we're going extinct, arm the Guardians and go after whatever came after us. Oh, Kalki Golem, the 10th avatar of Vishnu, who's supposed to kickstart existence again after the universe's most desperate time. Voliuspa is not a war mind. Voliuspa is implied to be a weapon system. And it's one of those things where it's like, we're going to call it a thing and then not tell you what it is because, I don't know, apparently they're like in Doctor Who, they make reference in previous years or decades in Doctor Who to the Time War with things like weapon systems called like the Nightmare Child, and there's something like Crucifix something. And then when they actually showed it, it looked like Halo and it sucked. So they're going to talk about these things with like these grand terms and then not show us. And when Rasputin describes it, he's going to say, I fought with Aurora knives and fire stolen from singularities, and my voice was static. And it's like, I'll trust you on that one. Yeah, C-beams glittering in the darkness. What's a C-beam? How many die 10s does it roll for damage? Shut up. Anyway, I kept the lore books where they talk about how they educated Rasputin. These ones. I wish they would make these into a lore book. Transcript 0, the unsolvable problem. You can lead a machine to language, but you can't make it think. Well, you can't, but I can. My name is Anna Bray. If you want to insult me, call me a neurolinguist. Not that it isn't a fine and noble profession, but neurolinguistics is about encoding language. I'm a psycholinguist. I study how language can lead to independent thought. The computer we call Rasputin is the next Sol Systems defense network. It can process data at a superluminal speed. It can uplink to the thousands of warsats that keep humanity safe. But we need more from it. We need it to think for itself, and that's where I come in. If Rasputin is to properly command our entire defense network, it has to learn a wide variety of skills as it performs. Any wrench banger can build a machine to solve specific problems. But why conquer a task if there's no insight to be had from the victory? Rasputin has to solve problems currently solvable only by humans. It has to form concepts and to self-improve without supervision. To keep us safe, it'll have to make decisions based on random intel we can't possibly anticipate. The lives and safety of every sentient being in the solar system depend on me teaching it how to do this. So, no pressure. The machine child. At their core, computers are responsive only to precise instructions from their programmers. Rasputin's designers made a mistake that exasperates me. They brought in linguists and neurobiologists, then tried to convert their expertise into rules for Rasputin to follow. Way to faceplant, people. No set of concrete data can ever wrangle a human language. It's not math. Language is mutable, adaptable. For every rule obeyed, there's a rule broken. Babies don't learn their native tongue through rules. They learn it through exposure, absorption. And until I roll up my sleeves and get to work, Rasputin is mankind's most expensive baby. So far, so good. If you set your goals realistically. Forget Rasputin for a moment. That's something I'm just not good at. If you look at me with the tiniest shred of approval, I'll kill myself to please you. I have some issues, so I'm going to make Rasputin a breakthrough construct. I fed him. Should be it, but I don't care. I fed him digitized copies of every major work of literature as a foundation for language use. The first idea. I've now given Rasputin the great works of philosophy in hopes he'll develop some sense of morality. Military history, he's been fed by the truckload, but then I started in with operas and symphonies. I don't want him just to think about things. Humans don't communicate strictly through data. We also communicate through art, through expression. If Rasputin is to be the most effective communications device in the Sol system, I want him to feel things. The best ideas start as jokes. Ask any psychologist. Jokes and ideas both rely on the unexpected. The brilliance of both can be measured by the intensity of the reaction they provoke. With that in mind, I fed Rasputin comedies from Shakespeare right up to the present day. This morning, I asked him to tell me a joke. Here it is. Ready? 2 quantum entangled particles walk into a neutron star. One said, "Can you point me towards the soap radio?" This is clearly a work in progress. The black box. I'm making significant progress with Rasputin as regards to the concept of value judgments. Obviously, that's something artificial intelligence isn't set up to tackle, but we need Rasputin to be able to make that leap. Here's a hypothetical. Say Rasputin has to redirect a malfunctioning warsat, and there are only 2 paths for it to take. One will breach the hull of a 1-seat planet jumper, instantly killing its pilot. The other path will disable a Venusian pleasure craft, leaving its inhabitants alive but certain to die of starvation before they can be found. To my surprise, when given this problem, Rasputin actually rendered a verdict. I'm not going to tell you what it is because I wanted you to enjoy your next Venusian pleasure craft trip. Rasputin continues to develop by leaps and bounds. In a trial simulation, he successfully interpreted the meaning of corrupted, borderline, incomprehensible data from a damaged warsat. This is exactly the sort of function we need him to fill. But that wasn't the amazing part. The mind blower was that without proof, evidence, or conscious reasoning, Rasputin sensed which warsat was in trouble. You heard me. Rasputin has developed intuition. I wish he could celebrate with me. This is where I think you get the idea that Rasputin would execute Twilight Exigent? That Rasputin would go into dormancy until he could be awakened. That I don't think it's that it prefers someone doing a job over someone doing something pleasurable. I think it prefers situations in which there is uncertainty. I think it prefers the situations in which it can't see the outcome. The ghost synapse. How does human intelligence actually work? What, by biological definition, is thinking? I define it as combining existing information to form new meaning. Thinking is the ability to create, to work beyond the boundaries of what you already know, to envision something completely new and unexpected. About an hour ago, I noticed my screensaver had been replaced. It now shows a breathtaking painting of a sunset over the Ericsson crater on Mars. A gift from Rasputin. I think he's ready to go online. I guess I saw this coming, but it was still a blow. I arrived in the lab this afternoon to discover that Rasputin had discarded my communications protocols. He's replaced them with a system-wide program that he himself designed. His voice is unlike anything that has ever existed. It is both haunting and lovely. It is also terrifyingly efficient. He's also begun upgrading warsats with new capabilities of his own invention, and I'm not entirely sure what those abilities are. It's exactly the goal we were striving towards, this level of autonomous control, and I know I should be celebrating. My work here is done, but it occurs to me that one existential concept I never taught Rasputin: trust. And even if he trusts us, are we 100% certain we can trust him? A little late. Little late, Anna. Maybe we'll get there, though. Where was I going with this? Oh, right. The future. Well, here's the future that we imagine. Or here's the future that we participate in when we play this video game. What do we see? Well, a lot of banners, a lot of walls, a lot of craters. This is all new since the Red War. Oddmeg, we only go into the city in a couple of very specific events, one of which is a raid. We go into the city to fight monsters a couple of times. But there's a lot of, like, I want to say this is based on Kowloon Walled City. Oh yeah, there are Crucible maps in the last city. And there's the Traveler. And I mean, like, this place is huge. Right. Well, you can kind of see their visible things that look like roads. There are light trails that look like time-lapse photos of roads. Yeah, you can see ships flying around. But the future looks a lot like the present. With some exceptions. Something, something, gentle kingdom ringed with spears. Also, it's Christmas, or the dawning. So what are we fighting for? Mine. It's mine. For loot, clearly. I mean, as gamers, we are fighting for diversion, for fun. A couple of months ago, I was playing Destiny here at the office, and Penelope, Graham and Kathleen's daughter, walked in, and she said, "Cameron, what are you doing?" And I said, I was playing a video game for a chance at an incremental increase in my ability to play the game. And she said, "What?" Maybe if you can't explain what you're doing to a 4-year-old, you should find something else to do. But basically the new lore book, Revelation, suggests that we're fighting for complexity. Oh Jesus, that's gonna kill someone. You know what? I meant to throw it outside the city. I like to think that because Guardians are immortal, when a Guardian lobs themselves, and because Guardians lob themselves off the tower all the time for lols, that there's just a large fenced-off area around the tower. that there's just a large no-go zone around the tower after, like, you know, a school bus got tacoed by a falling guardian. Yeah, because, like, you know, how you're probably able to run the numbers and figure, like, a Titan at a full run is going like 50 kilometers an hour, and, you know, 9.81 meters per second squared is the other. Like, you know, there's a vector, and then you draw a circle, and then you put up a fence. Oh, hey, we got a fresh tower. Let's see if we can watch it tick down at some point. And then you put on that fence, you put a sign that say, "It's raining men." Hallelujah. If you jump off, it resets. Anyway, I'm going to take a quick break and get a glass of water because I've been reading for a little while and my mouth feels like it's full of glue. And yeah, so let's take 5 minutes. Y'all go do some self-care. I'll go do some self-care. And then we'll be back and we'll play some video game. Let's actually play some video game. How's that sound? All right. See you shortly. Hey, I'm back. And I realized I said I was going to get ice cream. Water. I said I was going to go get water. But I found ice cream cake, which is the opposite of water for me. How was your break? I stole a beer from the fridge. And I'm going to go out after the stream and replace it. I will replace it. But for now, I'm having it. Would you believe I brushed my hair today? Why didn't anyone tell me I looked like shit? I'm impressed no one's jumped. Very good point, Oddmeg. Whose future is this? Who is this future for? Who gets to be in this future? Who doesn't get to be in this future? We don't see very much of humanity in this future. We see some people. We see the people who support us materially. A lot of mechanics, usually. We see a little bit of the politics of the future. Here we can speak with Iraq Jalal, leader of one of the city's political factions, Dead Orbit. We can visit Lakshmi too, the leader of another one of the city's political factions, the Future War Cult. And we can also visit the third of the city's major political factions, New Monarchy. Who lives all the way over here. Holy shit, Terry Crews. Yeah, how does Lakshmi read her terminal? That lighting is terrible. The political factions of the city are actually quite weird, in that Dead Orbit believes that humanity's time on Earth is over. Our days are numbered. Extinction is coming for us, and we have to get the fuck out now. Here's Hideo, leader of New Monarchy. New Monarchy believes that we should be ruled like... someone will come along to rule us like kings. They're very Aristotelian. Platonic?
Guardian, New Monarchy offers hope for the city.
They're very,
Guardian,
yeah, I guess conservative.
Legion returned.
And the Future War Cult found a Vex computer that told them that the future is only war, and that we have to prepare for war without end. Every once in a while, I think New Monarchy approaches Zavala about just becoming king. And Zavala tells them to shove it. I'm not exactly sure where they fall on public policy. Hideo, what's your opinion on public transit in the last safe city? What about education, healthcare,
Difference is, New Monarchy cares. We do our part.
environmental policy? Do we have any Any stances on these? Do we believe in restorative justice? What about the four pillars approach to addiction recovery? Yeah, I like. There was a if you ever watched Battlestar Galactica, there's a point where they realize that like there's 40,000 of us left. We don't need the United Nations anymore. We need a twice monthly town meeting. Oh, Happy New Year, UK people.
You've pursued your vendetta. What about the Crucible?
But the real reason Guardians do anything is for emotes. Yep, we're currently, I'm at GMT -8. So who lives in our future? Well, lots of Guardians, lots of humans. They have guns. They stand near Zavala. These are people like... I also like that this tower is not the original tower for Guardians. This was some other tower before. So there are people who are still like, excuse me, you're in my workplace. They have idle lines, they carry on conversations on their own, but they don't really do much. Presumably the, what is the city government called? There's the three political factions. There's the Vanguard. There's a couple of other things. The Prax Quarter, the Consensus. Presumably the Consensus assigned us real estate. You can have the top floor of this tower. I don't know if it's a democracy or not, actually. I don't think we're told whether it's actually a democracy. I don't know if people in the city get to vote. Guardians have... Player Guardians are members of an organization called the Vanguard, which is the city-based organization for Guardians. The Vanguard directs Guardians by giving them quests, basically. Zavala, I'm a new Guardian. What do I do? Who do I report to? What's my chain of command? Do I have reports of my own? What do you want me to go and do? You want me to go and thin the Horde? My orders are to scorched earth? Yeah, go to Mars and collect 10 Cabal asses. I think the the conceit for the Vanguard is supposed to evoke much more a knightly order than it is a contemporary military organization. In the past, Risen, before we came to call ourselves Guardians, we were called Risen, were ran the spectrum of human behaviors. And in the Dark Age, following the collapse of humanity's Golden Age, you wound up with a lot of Risen fighting each other and enslaving people or murdering people. And that is still a thing that goes on. You can still find warlords, apparently. One of the Titan exotics makes reference to a contemporary warlord. Do I even have it? Peregrine Greaves. Yeah, makes reference to a Lightbearer warlord. And this is a report being made to Saint 14 by Velt Harlow, who was on Eris's fire team. So this is an older report. It's maybe a couple of decades old. But you know, it's within living memory. Oh God, yeah. Let's talk about what it means to be outside the Vanguard. Are there non-Guardians who get sent out on our kinds of quests? No. I don't believe there are. I think it's way too dangerous out there for baseline humans. Or non-light-bearing humans. You will find awoken Corsairs in the Dreaming City who are out on missions, and they are typically getting their ass kicked. Devrim. Okay, yeah, Devrim's out there. He's shooting dudes in the face. Soraya talks about scouts. Presumably not all of Ikora's hidden are light bearers. And we do see human soldiers in the tower. So I'm wrong. You are correct. I am wrong. But we also hear, like, the drifters say that Shax's Red Jacks, like his robot guards, it takes hundreds of Red Jacks to down a single Hive Knight. Right. I think if you are not a light bearer, it's very difficult to get damage numbers on a lot of the monsters out there. I think if you are a human soldier, you probably spend a lot of your time seeing immune every time you pull the trigger. Where was I going? I have quests. Let's see, Vex, scout rifles. Light is a power that Guardians have that allows them to control people and I forget what the actual line is from The Last Jedi. No, I was quoting Rey from The Last Jedi. when before Luke says interesting, everything you said is wrong. Um, as my main is a warlock, there are 3 flavors of light. There is grape, electricity, and hot. Christ. Where would... Let's find that thing where Toland talks about the void. Is it in the Hellmouth? Elsewhere, light and darkness is referred to, especially by Rasputin, as paracausal forces, i.e., something that bypasses cause and effect, or has an effect without an apparent cause. And in the lore, this is what allows us to evade the Vex. Because the Vex are space robots from beyond our time that are capable of predicting the outcomes of things. And the reason the Vex aren't just like, well, we'll just take this action and that will lead us through the very many skeins of possibility towards the outcome we want, is because we have paracausal abilities that defy they have they're stochastic, or as you say, the ability to defy destiny. I like void. There are 3 kinds of light that Guardians have access to, and that the other paracausal forces in the game have access to: void, arc, and solar. Void is negation. Really, a lot of void abilities have the effect of shutting down other light powers. You especially see this with Titans, where their grenades will usually turn off people's light abilities. And yeah, they're protective. My big ability is called a Nova Bomb. It's a big boom. It's the biggest boom. It goes boom. Yeah, the Night Stalker super also is like tethers that shut down other people's light powers. It is the power of undoing. I think in the mission where warlocks get their void abilities back, what's her name? The Cryptarch from the farm. She has a Tyra. She refers to it in a couple of different ways. Karn quotes. How does she describe the void? Ba-ba-ba. It's not here. I wish I could go back and do those missions because they had great, like, they had the characters from the game telling you what they thought your things did, which was a wonderful kind of like, what's it called when something has a source in the game? Like when your radio plays your music? I forget the term. Tyra Karn. Warlock Void. Diegetic. Anyway, she says it like, you know, it's the taste of metal and the smell of rot and the sound when you are truly alone. And I don't know what any of that means, but it speaks to me. Solar abilities are not only the literal, but the conceptual associations of fire. You see solar aligned guardians in places of leadership, typically inspiring people. You know, they're the Knights of Wands. They also have a lot of healing abilities. Where Void protects, Solar makes whole again. Also, fire swords. I don't know. Arc is often said to be the flavor of light that is closest to living things. It is the light of life, I guess. And it has this articulation as electricity. Though I suppose it might be similar to the way that force lightning looks like electricity. Maybe it's a gradient, right? When a gradient gets very big, it can be equalized. When an electrical gradient gets very big, it can be equalized with lightning. An arc forms. But I like Void, because Void lets me blink. What's blinking, you may ask? I will show you. Yeah, blinking is how you fall into pits. Blinking is a very efficient way of throwing your guardian into a pit. Blinking is how you prevent your raid team from getting deathless runs. Blinking is how you find all of the hidden surfaces in the game. I want to go over there. Whoomp. Oh, I guess this wall was in the way.
Rumble. Watch your back, Guardian. No one else will.
Thank you. Hello. Ow! Oh, I got knifed in the head. One of the slow knives, too. That's gonna wind up on somebody's video.
2 for 1.
You're in first place.
Blows satisfying bassoon-like note across muzzle of shotgun. Mine. Oh ho 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 ho. Now I have a lightsaber.
You make that look easy, Warlock.
How am I so good at video games? Nope. Nope. Oh. That guy seemed really surprised. Handheld Supernova is a very skill-intensive ability, okay? Bad noise.
Only 5 minutes left.
This guy's being very efficient with their heavy ammo.
Shut the enemy down.
What? Dude, I just spent like 2.5 hours talking. I want to play video game. Leave me alone. Here, hold this. Aw, man! I'm so bad with Nova Warp. I'm not convinced it's a weak super like many people seem to be, but ugh, it definitely needs to be used gingerly. Thank you for your contribution to my ongoing victory. I have another weapon I forgot about. That was rude. What? Ow, ow, my everything. Yeah, I know. What am I even doing playing a Warlock in Crucible? If you don't have a dodge that heals you to full every 10 seconds. Bad move, brother. That guy was running away from someone. He slid directly into the muzzle of my shotgun. I win.
Second place.
What?
Not bad.
Boo!
You may be defeated, but you must never surrender.
I consider this a moral victory. It was probably the casual throwing of my super into the garbage that lost me that match. Oh yeah, like the power fantasy of the game is worn directly on its sleeve. It's, you know, deeply problematic. The Guardians are very special. And if you are not a Guardian, then you are not special. Baseline humans have very little presence in the game. Well, except for a couple of exceptions. There's Soraya. Ada is not a light bearer. Banshee is not a light bearer. Who else? Rahul, the Cryptarchs are... Oh, yeah, Holiday. Amanda Holiday is not a light bearer. Ada also has a lot of thoughts about light bearers. She lived through the Dark Age. Ava is not a light bearer. Devrim is out in the field. Rahul is not? Yeah, these people are all basically at our mercy, right? They all depend on us. They all need us to do things for you, right? All of the characters in the game, because this is a video game, are completely dependent on you and helpless without you. Right? With the Awoken, you actually do see quite a number of Awoken who are fearsome soldiers, knights and paladins and corsairs. But they are all vulnerable without you. They need you to come and do things for them. Secret, special, important things. Let's go and do one of these lore missions.
Another dog. We have protected
Hey,
our
Shirochi.
secrets too long. Share something with you.
I like the Dreaming City a lot more when I thought this was what Golden Age terraforming technology could do to asteroids. No, 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 no! I really enjoy how non-light bearers talk about sparrows. Where they're like, you cannot get me onto one of those things. A sparrow is a rocket engine with a handlebar. And Guardians are just like, what? They're not that bad. Motherfucking surgeon with his shotgun. Hold this. Where do you want me to go, game? Like, in the game, the reason that the Crucible exists, the reason that there's PvP, is because you have to train a Guardian to get comfortable with the idea of their own death.
The Awoken were born from the collapse. We have as many legends about our own genesis as there are statues in this city. One story speaks of a planet with 2 rings.
Temba, his arms wide. Give me the story of the planet with 2 rings. And I also think that there are a lot of the Crucible maps are in places where it's handy to have 6 or 12 Guardians all the time. Why don't I just miss everything? There's one lore tab that specifically talks about the maps in the Destiny 1 Crucible map in the Black Guardian, or the Black Garden, being there specifically so that there are 12 Guardians in the Black Garden at all times. Well, I mean, like, some maps are garrisons, basically. But, like, Petra is not a light bearer, but she definitely has some kind of telekinesis. Right? You see Petra doing, like, knife tricks. She shows Cade her Awoken knife trick. But they are mortal in a way that Guardians are not. Petra was on the training track to be a Techian, but it didn't agree with her. That's Petra. She's the Queen's Wrath. She's the one coordinating the Awoken military here. But, like, if you find Awoken Corsairs in the Dreaming City, they are not fighting, typically. Some of them are. Some of them are. Like the ones up here. They are having a scrap. The Dreaming City is still looping. I do enjoy the way that they found a way to explain why nothing ever changes in video games. Which is the Dreaming City is stuck in a time loop. Don't worry about it. But yeah, you have Awoken Corsairs out here doing a thing. They're doing an army out here. Anyone have ideas why I'm bad at Crucible? Is it because my marksmanship is just piss poor? Awoken? They are awoken from their dream. The Awoken are the people who were on the colony ship that was sucked into the black hole. Come on, come to Papa. Ah, not you! They are called Awoken because they woke up inside another dimension. Basically. Is it in the Maracena? Where they drop how the Awoken got their name? Yeah, this is where they go through and come back. Extasiate 2. She was nothingness. If she existed before, she existed only as possibilities stretched across the ether. Once there may have been a body that was an anticipation of the body not yet formed, and a soul that was an anticipation of the soul not yet encrypted, but they were not yet real. Then the universe began, and she was free to be born. First, there is a mandala, and upon the rings of that mandala are star-bright gems. Mara Ram, the closed symmetry, secret within itself, and she cuts it off-center so that it is imperfect, open at one end, not cycling back to its own beginning, but subliming away into future possibility. Mara, the permutation of one relationship to another. Ma becomes Ra. Ra becomes what may yet come. The 2 points suggest a line. With that amputation, around that scar, she incarnates, awakens with a gasp. Cold stone under her shoulders and back, and a face above her, radiant. Mara? The face says. What am I? Mara whispers. The second, the woman says. I'm Alice. I think you were Mara. The sky behind Alice blooms with stars, a haze of light like sun through mist, richer than a galactic core. Across that night sky arches the impossible twin shape of a double planetary ring. Mara gapes in wonder. I remember, she says. I was on the tether. The sudden need to keep this memory secret shuts her mouth. We're on a world, she says instead. How long have you been alone? Forever, I think. Come. She draws Mara to her feet. I want to show you what I've found. In a world that grows, oh, it is a world that grows, a world that thrives. The stone is rich with veins of platinum, and Mara tastes tingling inclusions of transuranic elements in a fingertip of earth. Silver rivers flow in fractal deltas to lakes as still and bright as coolant pools. Acres of forests, all woven at the root into a single tree. There is life of such variety and energy that each new crawling thing they see must be its own species. Or species do not yet mean anything here at all, and all that lives may intermingle. Jutting from the horizon is a titanic metal spear. The head of the spear is a metal dish kilometers across, buried in bedrock. I don't know what this is, Alice says. I only know that it's mine. They pass inside. There should be others, Mara says afterwards. There was room for others, thousands of others. Where are they? They're in the same place you came from. We have to make them real. Lee stares at Mara, and coruscations of white fire map the tiny lines and furrows of her skin. Her bright eyes narrow. Why were you the second? Why you, in particular? I don't know, Mara lies. It was the first lie ever told, the first secret kept. So the Awoken are kind of like space elves in the Tolkien favored of Iluvatar kind of way. They live in the distributary, and time passes very quickly in the distributary. And they live for millions of years in the distributary. And then some of them decide to leave. And when they emerge, they find a few years have passed, and the Earth is overrun by hideous monsters that need their heads clicked on. And it is the fall. But I did say I wanted to tell you a little bit about Guardians, light bearers who did not join the Vanguard. And we will leave off with that, since Ben will be here for some nopings soon. And we're going to talk about Mara's little brother, Uldren, who betrayed the Awoken and was killed and then became risen. For the last 3 weeks, the Guardian has been camping in a rusted-out shipping container far off the main pathways that are always buzzing with sparrows. He stays out of the way of other Guardians, and if he can't do that, he keeps his helmet on, always. All he has to his name is some beat-up gear, a ring, and a silk sheet. Those are the things he woke up with. He wears the ring on a chain and keeps the sheet as a comforting reminder of something he can't remember. Sometimes he wears it draped over his shoulder. The fabric is so fine that it makes him think about the place he must have come from before this life and how much nicer it is than where he is now. He spends his days alone. Other Guardians are an unpredictable source of pain and confusion, and they see him the same way. Some react to him with outright hostility. Others are overcome by some personal and unexplained grief. He doesn't know why. That was the most painful lesson of being reborn. It's better to be alone. So he's always alone now, except for his ghost. One night, he sits with his head against his knees and listens to the distant snaps of gunfire. He hasn't seen anyone in about a week, but he can hear them. Somehow that makes the loneliness worse, more potent. Did you know, his ghost says, bright but gentle, the purple glint of his shell reflects the half-light outside the crate, that in the last city they are celebrating? They call it the Dawning. It is a celebration of friendship and hope and warmth. The Guardian keeps his eyes closed and forces down his bitterness. The silence lingers between them, heavy and filled with unsaid things, until his ghost gently bumps his shoulder. To feel good, they say to each other, "Happy Dawning." Still, the Guardian says nothing, and his own silence makes him sick with himself. His ghost has never doubted him, never doubted anyone, really. He is a well of relentless optimism, and as infuriating as that is, it's also heartbreaking and comforting and a relief. The Guardian is not going to be the one to disappoint him. There's been too much disappointment in his life already. Happy dawning, he says. So that was Aldrin. He has no idea why people hate him, because when you're arisen, you lose your memories. You're given a chance to start over. But what does starting over mean? It doesn't erase everyone else's memories. When you're arisen, the wound in the universe that was left by your death still exists. What can you do? Make it better, I guess. Anyway, time to thank subs. Luminaire P resub for the 37th month. Space Wizard Chores. Jaden M resub for the 31st month. Last sub of the year. Boots Malone sub for the 35th month. Spider Corky subscribed for the 43rd month. 321 Pants Off gave us 100 bits. Happy New Year, friends. Be safe tonight. Drink plenty of water and no drinky drivey. I trust you. E-Block gave us 155 bits. Time to work in the Space Factory. Vera sub for the 45th month. Rare New Year's Eve catch, I guess. And Eve, it is 2309. That was 2 hours ago. Happy New Year. Vorpal Warhammer sub for the 24th month. Happy New Year. Narhida 72 came back for the 11th month. Happy New Year, everyone. Vera gifted 10 subs to Zosha Rose, Frank SCX, Mystery Monkey, Uppercase CCC, Snow Wraith, Frozen Nitrogen, Narton 9, The Chosen 125, Invader Jim 0, and Bezeric. Cold War 900 is a brand new sub. Welcome to the channel. Thank you. Spicy Dungus resub for the 36th month, saying hi. Happy 3 years. SW Pilgrim came back for the 45th month, saying hello. Excited Scree came back for the 38th month. Demigod Chaos came back for the 32nd month. W Nightshade is a brand new sub. Welcome. Stephen Dewey is also a brand new sub. Welcome. General Purpose came back for the 11th month. Mantifold came back for the 20th month. Modrian came back for the 39th month. The Teddy Bear 676 came back for the 11th month. 11 months with the awesome people of Lur. Time to Fry came back for the 13th month. 13 months. That's almost a year. Anti-Muffin cheered with 300 bits. Happy New Year. 2019 can get into the sea. Yeet. Velvet Falcon came back for the 39th month. The Moat Man came back for the 69th month. Nice. Destiny, no escaping that for me. Not for any of us. Nomen Nemesis. Nomen Nemesis came back for 49 months. That's almost half a year. I'll have to catch up on all the previous streams to have context for this, but thank you for the lore driving, Cam. I'm enjoying the stream regardless. Oh, thank you. Dilbert subscribed for the 43rd month. Destiny 2, I'm so far behind on my space chores, you never catch up with your space chores. Romanian Maya Sketchin came back for the 56th month. Happy New Year, friends. Looking forward to more content in 2020. Samwonk came back for the 40th month. Fervias came back for the 25th month. Space Wizard Lore, my fave. Cheese 7891 came back gave us 50 bits. Happy New Year, Cam. Happy New Year. Wolf and Dragoon sub for the 13th month. More than a year of subs. LTNT Vandal came back for the 6th month. Thanks for the Destiny 2 stream. I love hearing you talk about metaphysics and philosophy. I can only do it because people in chat help me. 10th Tech Priest came back for the 26th month. Happy old lore. Jolena Rotersund came back for the 11th month. Deathly Placebo came back for the 28th month. Map Board Games came back for the 27th month, just in time to cheer the Lursman for the new year. The Smiling Mammoth came back for the 8th month. Happy New Year from the UK. Isirin91 sub for the 45th month. Happy New Year from the UK. D-Dubs came back for the 39th month. Happy New Year from the UK. Happy New Year to all three of you. Real Legit Streamer sub for the 8th month. Thank you. Elspeth Tyrell came back for the 36th month. Hi Cam, I shared an elevator with you once. It was very quiet and kind of awkward, but also cool. Oh. Well, I hope it wasn't too awkward. My bad. Lost Luck 42 came back for the 25th month, and Truthorn came back for the 38th month. New year, new subs. So to loop it all back, what's the future? Well, it's the only place we're all going together. Dog of Myth just gifted 2 subs to Skunky Blitz and Mandu7014. I think that's from Transmetropolitan. Spider Jerusalem tells people in one of his columns that the future is coming and it's the only place we're going together. What does it look like? Well, probably a lot like this, but iterated upon. So... I mean, there might not be space wizards in it, but I'm gonna act like we're all gonna be here for the long haul. I don't know if that's right for you, but I suggest trying it on for size, if you're looking for something new to do. But I look forward to some future wherein all of this is compressed into a layer of earth the depth of a sheet of paper. Because it will be one day. Weird to think of, huh? Geologic time. Think about it when you get a chance. Or stellar time. As Carl Sagan said, there will one day be a last perfect day on Earth.
All hands in the field, be advised. Take an incursion incoming.
And I plan for there to be humans to see it. Or whatever becomes of us. Anyway, Ben will be here shortly to nope. And I need to go and replace the beer that I found in the fridge. All right. Peace. Happy New Year.